Welcome back to the corner. I am, of course, your host, Rogan. We're going to read some more H.G. Wells, The Time Machine. His first science fiction novel, I believe his first novel. I'm a huge fan of Wells's fiction, by the way. I don't know so much about him as you might think, given how much of a fan of his fiction I am. I'm acting weirdly dodgy because I thought that putting myself in the back corner in this little alcove was a good idea. I feel like I'm being interrogated. I'm not sure why. Part of it has to do with the lamp. Like I don't know. Anyway, if you were here before, you know we talked about how The Time Machine is the first modern science fiction novel. It is the first time travel story. In the story, the rich effete what's the word I'm looking for? Dilettante. Man about town. A bullshitter of genius. The time traveler, we're told to call him. That he's gone and had his time traveling adventure the afternoon of a dinner party. And so he comes staggering in wrecked from 8 days on his timeline, spent 800,000 years in the future. So then he sits down to eat and tell his friends the story of his adventures in the far future. Let us continue. I didn't actually stop in the middle of a chapter. I realized I was in the middle of a long chapter. Nobody was interacting in the chat at all. It was telling me 0 people were here, even though I knew it wasn't 0, because I knew at least John Porky was here, so and it was being weird. But that was sketching me out. And then I realized, in the chapter, it's going to be a good 30 or 40 minutes before I get to the end of the chapter. So I just stopped in the middle of a chapter. Oh my God. Shit, what will we do about me? What will we do? Where was I, actually? I didn't even have a bookmark. It did not even have a bookmark. Right. Okay. I'm going to back up to... I don't know at what point he decides to settle on calling them the Eloi. Why did I just launch into reading chapter 4 if I was going to just stop? I don't know. All right. I don't know. I remember I had eyes on the clock and there didn't seem to be anyone in here. That was weird. I try to make sure to do these reading streams even if no one is here, because it's a library for people to listen to later, of course. Just came in. Is that Zoe? As always, I've turned off the live Admiral interruptions for while I'm reading live. You are more than welcome to contribute at that PayPal link. There's a dono button too. Thank you. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, Chapter 4. In another moment, we were standing face to face, I and this fragile thing out of futurity. He came straight up to me and laughed into my eyes. The absence from his bearing of any sign of fear struck me at once. Then he turned to the two others who were following him and spoke to them in a strange and very sweet and liquid tongue. There were others coming, and presently a little group of perhaps 8 or 10 of these exquisite creatures were about me. One of them addressed me. It came into my head, oddly enough, that my voice was too harsh and deep for them. So I shook my head and, pointing to my ears, shook it again. He came a step forward, hesitated, and then touched my hand. Then I felt other soft little tentacles upon my back and shoulders. They wanted to make sure I was real. There was nothing in this at all alarming. Indeed, there was something in these pretty little people that inspired confidence, a graceful gentleness, a certain childlike ease. And besides, they looked so frail that I could fancy myself flinging the whole dozen of them about like ninepins. But I made a sudden motion to warn them when I saw their little pink hands feeling at the time machine. Happily then, when it was not too late, I thought of a danger I had hitherto forgotten. And reaching over the bars of the machine, I unscrewed the little levers that would set it in motion and put these in my pocket. Then I turned again to see what I could do in the way of communication. And then, looking more nearly into their features, I saw some further peculiarities in their Dresden china type of prettiness. Their hair, which was uniformly curly, came to a sharp end at the neck and cheek. There was not the faintest suggestion of it on the face, and their ears were singularly minute. The mouths were small, with bright red, rather thin lips, and the little chins ran to a point. The eyes were large and mild, and, this may seem egotism on my part, I fancied even that there was a certain lack of the interest I might have expected in them. There's a huge thunderstorm outside. How do you feel about H.G. Wells, Sophie? I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't know. I wonder if British kids still read him. The writer I am reading, H.G. Wells, who wrote The Time Machine. Are you a fan? You said what? The fuck? Don't worry about it. No. Well, let me not distract my chat from ignoring what we're here to do. No. Bro, I'm deaf. As they made no effort to communicate with me, but simply stood round me smiling and speaking in soft cooing notes to each other, I began the conversation. I pointed to the time machine and to myself. Then, hesitating for a moment how to express time, I pointed to the sun. At once a quaintly pretty little figure in checkered purple and white followed my gesture and then astonished me by imitating the sound of thunder. For a moment I was staggered, though the import of his gesture was plain enough. The question had come into my mind abruptly. Were these creatures fools? You may hardly understand how it took me. You see, I had always anticipated that the people of the year 800 and 2000 odd would be incredibly in front of us in knowledge, art, everything. Then one of them suddenly asked me a question that showed him to be on the intellectual level of one of our 5-year-old children. Asked me, in fact, if I had come from the sun in a thunderstorm. It let loose the judgment I had suspended upon their clothes, their frail, light limbs, and fragile features. A flow of disappointment rushed across my mind. For a moment I felt that I had built the time machine in vain. I nodded, pointed to the sun, and gave them such a vivid rendering of a thunderclap as startled them. They all withdrew a pace or so and bowed. Then came one laughing towards me, carrying a chain of beautiful flowers altogether new to me, and put it about my neck. The idea was received with melodious applause, and presently they were all running to and fro for flowers, and laughingly flinging them upon me until I was almost smothered with blossom. You who have never seen the like can scarcely imagine what delicate and wonderful flowers countless years of culture had created. Then someone suggested that their playthings should be exhibited in the nearest building, and so I was led past the Sphinx of white marble, which had seemed to watch me all the while with a smile at my astonishment, towards a vast gray edifice of fretted stone. As I went with them, the memory of my confident anticipations of a profoundly grave and intellectual posterity came with irresistible merriment to my mind. The building had a huge entry and was altogether of colossal dimensions. I was naturally most occupied with the growing crowd of little people, and with the big open portals that yawned before me, shadowy and mysterious. My general impression of the world I saw over their heads was a tangled waste of beautiful bushes and flowers, a long neglected and yet weedless garden. I saw a number of tall spikes of strange white flowers, measuring a foot perhaps across the spread of the waxen petals. They grew scattered, as if wild, among the variegated shrubs, but as I say, I did not examine them closely at this time. The time machine was left deserted on the turf among the rhododendrons. The arch of the doorway was richly carved, but naturally I did not observe the carving very narrowly, though I fancied I saw suggestions of old Phoenician decorations as I passed through, and it struck me that they were very badly broken and weather-worn. Several more brightly clad people met me in the doorway, and so we entered, I, dressed in dingy 19th century garments, looking grotesque enough, garlanded with flowers, and surrounded by an eddying mass of bright, soft colored robes and shining white limbs in a melodious whirl of laughter and laughing speech. The big doorway opened into a proportionately great hall hung with brown. The roof was in shadow, and the windows, partially glazed with colored glass and partially unglazed, admitted a tempered light. The floor was made up of huge blocks of some very hard white metal, not plates nor slabs, blocks, and it was so much worn, as I judged by the going to and fro of past generations, as to be deeply channeled along the more frequented ways. Transverse to the length were innumerable tables made of slabs of polished stone, raised, perhaps a foot from the floor, and upon these were heaps of fruits. Some I recognized as a kind of hypertrophied raspberry and orange, but for the most part they were strange. Between the tables was scattered a great number of cushions. Upon these my conductors seated themselves, signing for me to do likewise. With a pretty absence of ceremony, they began to eat the fruit with their hands, flinging peel and stalks and so forth into the round openings in the sides of the tables. I was not loath to follow their example, for I felt thirsty and hungry. As I did so, I surveyed the hall at my leisure. And perhaps the thing that struck me most was its dilapidated look. The stained glass windows, which displayed only a geometrical pattern, were broken in many places, and the curtains that hung across the lower end were thick with dust. And it caught my eye that the corner of the marble table near me was fractured. Nevertheless, the general effect was extremely rich and picturesque. There were, perhaps, a couple of hundred people dining in the hall, and most of them, seated as near to me as they could come, were watching me with interest, their little eyes shining over the fruit they were eating. All were clad in the same soft and yet strong, silky material. Fruit, by the by, was all their diet. These people of the remote future were strict vegetarians. And while I was with them, in spite of some carnal cravings, I had to be frugivorous also. Indeed, I found afterwards that horses, cattle, sheep, dogs had followed the ichthyosaurus into extinction. But the fruits were very delightful. One, in particular, that seemed to be in season all the time I was there, a flowery thing in a three-sided husk, was especially good, and I made it my staple. At first I was puzzled by all these strange fruits, and by the strange flowers I saw, but later I began to perceive their import. However, I am telling you of my fruit dinner in the distant future now. So soon as my appetite was a little checked, I determined to make a resolute attempt to learn the speech of these new men of mine. Clearly, that was the next thing to do. The fruits seemed a convenient thing to begin upon, and holding one of these up, I began a series of interrogative sounds and gestures. I had some considerable difficulty in conveying my meaning. At first, my efforts met with a stare of surprise or inextinguishable laughter, but presently a fair haired little creature seemed to grasp my intention and repeated a name. They had to chatter and explain the business at great length to each other, and my first attempts to make the exquisite little sounds of their language caused an immense amount of amusement. However, I felt like a schoolmaster amidst children, and persisted. And presently I had a score of noun substantives, at least at my command, and then I got to demonstrative pronouns and even the verb to eat. But it was slow work, and the little people soon tired and wanted to get away from my interrogations, so I determined, rather of necessity, to let them give their lessons in little doses when they felt inclined. In very little doses, I found they were before long, for I never met people more indolent or more easily fatigued. A queer thing I soon discovered about my little hosts, and that was their lack of interest. They would come to me with eager cries of astonishment like children, but, like children, they would soon stop examining me and wander away after some other toy. The dinner and my conversational beginnings ended, I noted for the first time that almost all those who had surrounded me at first were gone. It is odd, too, how speedily I came to disregard these little people. I went out through the portal into the sunlit world again as soon as my hunger was satisfied. I was continually meeting more of these men of the future, who would follow me a little distance, chatter and laugh about me, and, having smiled and gesticulated in a friendly way, leave me again to my own devices. The calm of evening was upon the world as I emerged from the great hall, and the scene was lit by the warm glow of the setting sun. At first, things were very confusing. Everything was so entirely different from the world I had known, even the flowers. The big building I had left was situated on the slope of a broad river valley, but the Thames had shifted perhaps a mile from its present position. I resolved to mount to the summit of a crest, perhaps a mile and a half away, from which I could get a wider view of this our planet in the year 800 and 2701 AD. For that, I should explain, was the date the little dials of my machine recorded. As I walked, I was watchful for every impression that could possibly help to explain the condition of ruinous splendor in which I found the world, for ruinous it was. A little way up the hill, for instance, was a great heap of granite bound together by masses of aluminium, a vast labyrinth of precipitous walls and crumpled heaps, amidst which were thick heaps of very beautiful pagoda-like plants, nettles possibly, but wonderfully tinted with brown about the leaves, and incapable of stinging. It was evidently the derelict remains of some vast structure, to what end built I could not determine. It was here that I was destined, at a later date, to have a very strange experience, the first intimation of a still stranger discovery, but of that I will speak in its proper place. Looking round with a sudden thought, from a terrace on which I rested for a while, I realized. I apparently hit edit settings. No. Suddenly I had a thing open in front of me. Sorry. Are you there? Testing, yes. All right, I got a level. Looking round with a sudden thought from a terrace on which I rested for a while, I realized that there were no small houses to be seen. Apparently, the single house, and possibly even the household, had vanished. Here and there among the greenery were palace-like buildings, but the house and the cottage, which form such characteristic features of our own English landscape, had disappeared. Communism, said I to myself. And on the heels of that came another thought. I looked at the half-dozen little figures that were following me. Then, in a flash, I perceived that all had the same form of costume, the same soft hairless visage, and the same girlish rotundity of limb. It may seem strange, perhaps, that I had not noticed this before, but everything was so strange. Now I saw the fact plainly enough. In costume, and in all the differences of texture and bearing that now mark off the sexes from each other, these people of the future were alike. And the children seemed to my eyes to be but the miniatures of their parents. I judged then that the children of that time were extremely precocious, physically at least, and I found afterwards abundant verification of my opinion. Seeing the ease and security in which these people were living, I felt that this close resemblance of the sexes was, after all, what one would expect, for the strength of a man and the softness of a woman. The institution of the family and the differentiation of occupations are mere militant necessities of an age of physical force, where population is balanced and abundant. Much childbearing becomes an evil rather than a blessing to the state. Where violence comes but rarely and offspring are secure, there is less necessity. Indeed, there is no necessity for an efficient family. And the specialization of the sexes with reference to their children's needs disappears. We see some beginnings of this even in our own time. And in this future age, it was complete. This was written in the 1890s. I don't remember the exact date. I think 1895, I think. I have to look it up. This, I must remind you, was my speculation at the time. Later, I was to appreciate how far it fell short of the reality. Mr. John Porky, how are you? You've never read this, right, John? Do you know the movies of it? So. There was a famous movie in the Zeros, but I mean, it wasn't that famous, so it'll be forgotten soon if it hasn't been already. What's that guy's name? Oh my God. He's in Lawless. He's that weird, he's an Australian character actor, and they keep trying to make him an action movies guy, but he seems kind of too prissy and like a creepy gay guy. No, he never read these movies. Is the movie called The Time Machine? Yes. Yes, the movie's called The Time Machine. Guy Pearce, that's the name of the actor I'm trying to think of. I don't think he is gay. He seems creepy and prissy and sort of queerish in such a way that they've tried to sell him as an action movie guy, and I don't think it works very well. He kind of works okay in The Time Machine. It's not a great movie. The 60s movie is a great movie of The Time Machine. I don't know exactly what year it is. I was just looking at it. I think 62 or 63. While I was musing upon these things, my attention was attracted by a pretty little structure like a well under a cupola. I thought in a transitory way of the oddness of wells still existing, then resumed the thread of my speculations. There were no large buildings towards the top of the hill, and as my walking powers were evidently miraculous, I was presently left alone for the first time. With a strange sense of freedom and adventure, I pushed on up to the crest. There I found a seat of some yellow metal that I did not recognize, corroded in places with a kind of pinkish rust and half smothered in soft moss, the armrests cast and filed into the resemblance of griffins' heads. I sat down on it, and I surveyed the broad view of our old world under the sunset of that long day. It was as sweet and fair a view as I have ever seen. The sun had already gone below the horizon, and the west was flaming gold, touched with some horizontal bars of purple and crimson. Poor Pyewacket. I'm just going to shut this door and let her howl out there. I hate to do it. Like, I hate to even, like, she's been doing this. This is the third night that she's been doing this in the middle of the night. So I guess the neighbors are used to it. Probably ready to kill me. I'm not sure actually why I'm not angry at Pyewacket. Probably for whatever the same reason is that everybody thinks I'm drunk or stoned all the time now. Below is the valley of the Thames, in which the river lay like a band of burnished steel. I have already spoken of the great palaces dotted about among the variegated greenery, some in ruins and some still occupied. Here and there rose a white or silvery figure in the waste garden of the earth. Here and there came the sharp vertical line of some cupola or obelisk. There were no hedges, no signs of proprietary rights, no evidences of agriculture. The whole earth had become a garden. So, watching, I began to put my interpretation upon the things I had seen, and as it shaped itself to me that evening, my interpretation was something in this way. Afterwards, I found I had got only a half truth, only a glimpse of one facet of the truth. It seemed to me that I had happened upon humanity, upon the wane. The ruddy sunset set me thinking of the sunset of mankind. For the first time, I began to realize an odd consequence of the social effort in which we are at present engaged. And yet, come to think, it is a logical consequence enough. Strength is the outcome of need. Security sets a premium on feebleness. The work of ameliorating the conditions of life, the true civilizing process that makes life more and more secure, had gone steadily on to a climax. One triumph of a united humanity over nature had followed another. Things that are now mere dreams had become projects deliberately put in hand and carried forward, and the harvest was what I saw. After all, the sanitation and the agriculture of today are still in the rudimentary stage. The science of our time has attacked but a little department of the field of human disease, but even so, it spreads its operations very steadily and persistently. Our agriculture and horticulture destroy a weed just here and there and cultivate perhaps a score or so of wholesome plants, leaving the greater number to fight out a balance as they can. We improve our favorite plants and animals, and how few they are, gradually by selective breeding. Now a new and better peach, now a seedless grape, now a sweeter and larger flower, now a more convenient breed of cattle. We improve them gradually because our ideals are vague and tentative, and our knowledge is very limited because nature, too, is shy and slow in our clumsy hands. Someday all this will be better organized, and still better. That is the drift of the current, in spite of the eddies. The whole world will be intelligent, educated, and cooperating. Things will move faster and faster towards the subjugation of nature. In the end, wisely and carefully, we shall readjust the balance of animal and vegetable life to suit our human needs. This adjustment, I say, must have been done, and done well, done indeed for all time, in the space of time across which my machine had leaped. The air was free from gnats, the earth from weeds or fungi. Everywhere were fruits and sweet and delightful flowers. Brilliant butterflies flew hither and thither. The ideal of preventive medicine was attained. Diseases had been stamped out. I saw no evidence of any contagious diseases during all my stay. And I shall have to tell you later that even the processes of putrefaction and decay had been profoundly affected by these changes. Social triumphs, too, had been affected. I saw mankind housed in splendid shelters, gloriously clothed, and as yet I had found them engaged in no toil. There were no signs of struggle, neither social nor economical struggle. The shop, the advertisement, traffic, all that commerce which constitutes the body of our world was gone. It was natural on that golden evening that I should jump at the idea of a social paradise. The difficulty of increasing population had been met, I guessed, and population had ceased to increase. But with this change in condition comes inevitably adaptations to the change. What, unless biological science is a mass of errors, is the cause of human intelligence and vigor? Hardship and freedom, conditions under which the active, strong, and subtle survive and the weaker go to the wall, conditions that put a premium upon the loyal alliance of capable men, upon self restraint, patience, and the decision and decision. And the institution of the family and the emotions that arise therein, the fierce jealousy, the tenderness for offspring, parental self devotion, all found their justification and support in the imminent dangers of the young. Now, where are these imminent dangers? There's a sentiment arising, and it will grow, against connubial jealousy, against fierce maternity, against passion of all sorts, unnecessary things now, and things that make us uncomfortable, savage survivals, discords in a refined and pleasant life. I thought of the physical slightness of the people, their lack of intelligence, and those big, abundant ruins, and it strengthened my belief in a perfect conquest of nature. For after the battle comes quiet. Humanity had been strong, energetic, and intelligent, and had used all its abundant vitality to alter the conditions under which it lived, and now came the reaction of the altered conditions. Under the new conditions of perfect comfort and security, that restless energy that with us is strength would become weakness. Even in our own time, certain tendencies and desires, once necessary for survival, are a constant source of failure. Physical courage and the love of battle, for instance, are no great help, may even be hindrances to a civilized man. And in a state of physical balance and security, power, intellectual as well as physical, would be out of place. For countless years, I judged there had been no danger of war or solitary violence, no danger from wild beasts, no wasting disease to require strength of constitution, no need of toil. For such a life, what we should call the weak are as well equipped as the strong are indeed no longer weak. Better equipped indeed they are, for the strong would be fretted by an energy for which there was no outlet. No doubt the exquisite beauty of the buildings I saw was the outcome of the last surgings of the now purposeless energy of mankind before it settled down into perfect harmony with the conditions under which it lived, the flourish of that triumph which began the last great peace. This has ever been the fate of energy and security. It takes to art and to eroticism, and then come languor and decay. Even this artistic impetus would at last die away. Had almost died in the time I saw, to adorn themselves with flowers, to dance, to sing in the sunlight. So much was left of the artistic spirit, and no more. Even that would fade in the end into a contented inactivity. We are kept keen on the grindstone of pain and necessity, and it seemed to me that here was that hateful grindstone broken at last. As I stood there in the gathering dark, I thought that in this simple explanation I had mastered the problem of the world, mastered the whole secret of these delicious people. Possibly the checks they had devised for the increase of population had succeeded too well, and their numbers had rather diminished than kept stationary. That would account for the abandoned ruins. Very simple was my explanation, and plausible enough, as most wrong theories are. Um, John Porky. So I'm going to go over here to smoke. So the two movies, the movie in the Zeros is pretty good. The '60s movie is really cool. Uh, yeah, you'd like it more if you didn't know the book. Like the book has got a lot going on that you couldn't really do in a movie. H.G. Wells is a committed socialist. Uh, I was gonna say his books are didactic, I guess is like he clearly thinks that science fiction has the purpose of explaining things. Like I don't know that he uses it to sell like a socialist ideal as much as he uses it to explain some ideas about possible futures. But I don't think of all the great H.G. Wells novels, the famous ones, the closest one to really being easy to make a movie of is The Island of Dr. Moreau. I don't know, The Invisible Man is similar to the movie too. Um, but I mean, there's great movies of all these books from that era. Like, the Time Machine, I don't know why they didn't do the Time Machine until the 60s. I mean, special effects. The the time travel sequence in the movie of the Time Machine, the the famous one from the early 60s, is incredible. Like, it's the idea is that you can see time passing faster and faster and gaining velocity, but they did all this like real not stop motion, but like slowed down. Like, they ran the camera so slow that like you can see candles burn in like a second and stuff like that. And so the sequence about him going forward in time is all that stuff. It's so cool. It's really cool. Um, the part about the far future is good too in that movie, but it bugs me that like they didn't like the idea is that these people they're not human. Like he keeps calling them people, but they've evolved enough so that they're not human. They're like 4.5 feet tall. Like he does keep calling them little people too. But I don't remember how he ends up calling them Eloy, which is what he ends up calling them eventually. Um, give me a second. Eloy's Greek. Eloy's Greek. The two peoples he calls Eloy and Morlocks. I don't remember how. I hadn't realized how long it's been since I read this. Really, it's been since the 90s. For sure. For sure, it's been since the 90s, and it might be since the 80s. Like, I'm a big H.G. Wells fan, and The Time Machine is one of the ones I like, but the ones that I've read over and over are The War of the Worlds and Island of Dr. Moreau. I don't know, First Man in the Moon and Food of the Gods. I remember those well also. These are all great novels. Chapter 5. As I stood there musing over this too perfect triumph of man, the full moon, yellow and gibbous, came up out of an overflow of silver light in the northeast. The bright little figures ceased to move about below. A noiseless owl flitted by, and I shivered with the chill of the night. I determined to descend and find where I could sleep. I looked for the building I knew. Then my eye traveled along to the figure of the white sphinx upon the pedestal of bronze, growing distinct as the light of the rising moon grew brighter. I could see the silver birch against it. There was the tangle of rhododendron bushes, black in the pale light, and there was the little lawn. I looked at the lawn again. A queer doubt chilled my complacency. No, said I stoutly to myself, that was not the lawn. But it was the lawn, for the white leprous face of the sphinx was towards it. Can you imagine what I felt as this conviction came home to me? But you cannot. The time machine was gone. At once, like a lash across the face, came the possibility of losing my own age, of being left helpless in this strange new world. The bare thought of it was an actual physical sensation. I could feel it grip me at the throat and stop my breathing. In another moment, I was in a passion of fear and running with great leaping strides down the slope. Once I fell headlong and cut my face. I lost no time in stanching the blood, but jumped up and ran on with a warm trickle down my cheek and chin. All the time I ran, I was saying to myself, they've moved it a little, pushed it under the bushes out of the way. Nevertheless, I ran with all my might. All the time, with the certainty that sometimes comes with excessive dread, I knew that such assurance was folly, knew instinctively that the machine was removed out of my reach. My breath came with pain. I suppose I covered the whole distance from the hill crest to the little lawn, 2 miles perhaps, in 10 minutes, and I am not a young man. I cursed aloud as I ran, at my confident folly in leaving the machine, wasting good breath thereby. I cried aloud, and none answered. Not a creature seemed to be stirring in that moonlit world. When I reached the lawn, my worst fears were realized. Not a trace of the thing was to be seen. I felt faint and cold when I faced the empty space among the black tangle of bushes. I ran round it furiously, as if the thing might be hidden in a corner, and then stopped abruptly with my hands clutching my hair. Above me towered the Sphinx upon the bronze pedestal, white, shining, leprous in the light of the rising moon. It seemed to smile in mockery of my dismay. I might have consoled myself by imagining the little people had put the mechanism in some shelter for me, had I not felt assured of their physical and intellectual inadequacy. That is what dismayed me, the sense of some hitherto unsuspected power, through which intervention my invention had vanished. Yet, of one thing I felt assured: unless some other age had produced its exact duplicate, the machine could not have moved in time. The attachment of the levers, I will show you the method later, prevented anyone from tampering with it in that way when they were removed. It had moved and was hid only in space. But then, where could it be? I think I must have had a kind of frenzy. I remember running violently in and out among the moonlit bushes all round the Sphinx and startling some white animal that, in the dim light, I took for a small deer. I remember, too, late that night, beating the bushes with my clenched fist until my knuckles were gashed and bleeding from the broken twigs. Then, sobbing and raving in my anguish of mind, I went down to the great building of stone. The big hall was dark, silent, and deserted. I slipped on the uneven floor and fell over one of the malachite tables, almost breaking my shin. I lit a match and went on past the dusty curtains, of which I have told you. There I found a second great hall covered with cushions, upon which, perhaps, a score or so of the little people were sleeping. I have no doubt they found my second appearance strange enough, coming suddenly out of the quiet darkness with inarticulate noises and the splutter and flare of a match, for they had forgotten about matches. "Where is my time machine?" I began, bawling like an angry child, laying hands upon them and shaking them up together. It must have been very queer to them. Some laughed. Most of them looked sorely frightened. When I saw them standing round me, it came into my head that I was doing as foolish a thing as it was possible for me to do under the circumstances in trying to revive the sensation of fear. For, reasoning from their daylight behavior, I thought that fear must be forgotten. Abruptly, I dashed down the match and, knocking one of the people over in my course, went blundering across the big dining hall again, out under the moonlight. I heard cries of terror and their little feet running and stumbling this way and that. I do not remember all I did as the moon crept up the sky. I suppose it was the unexpected nature of my loss that maddened me. I felt hopelessly cut off from my own kind, a strange animal in an unknown world. I must have raved to and fro, screaming and crying upon God and fate. I have a memory of horrible fatigue as the long night of despair wore away, of looking in this impossible place and that, of groping among moonlit ruins and touching strange creatures in the black shadows. At last, of lying on the ground near the Sphinx and weeping with absolute wretchedness. I had nothing left but misery. Then I slept, and when I woke again it was full day, and a couple of sparrows were hopping round me on the turf within reach of my arm. I sat up in the freshness of the morning, trying to remember how I had got there and why I had such a profound sense of desertion and despair. Then things came clear in my mind. With the plain, reasonable daylight, I could look at my circumstances fairly in the face. I saw the wild folly of my frenzy overnight, and I could reason with myself. Suppose the worst, I said. Suppose the machine altogether lost, perhaps destroyed. It behoves me to be calm and patient, to learn the way of the people, to get a clear idea of the method of my loss, and the means of getting materials and tools, so that in the end, perhaps, I may make another. That would be my only hope, a poor hope, perhaps, but better than despair. And, after all, it was a beautiful and curious world. But probably the machine had only been taken away. Still, I must be calm and patient, find its hiding place, and recover it by force or cunning. And with that I scrambled to my feet and looked about me, wondering where I could bathe. I felt weary, stiff, and travel soiled. The freshness of the morning made me desire an equal freshness. I had exhausted my emotion. Indeed, as I went about my business, I found myself wondering at my intense excitement overnight. I made a careful examination of the ground about the little lawn. I wasted some time in futile questionings, conveyed, as well as I was able, to such of the little people as came by. They all failed to understand my gestures. Some were simply stolid. Some thought it was jest and laughed at me. I had the hardest task in the world to keep my hands off their pretty laughing faces. It was a foolish impulse, but the devil begotten of fear and blind anger was ill curbed and still eager to take advantage of my perplexity. The turf gave better counsel. I found a groove ripped in it, about midway between the pedestal of the Sphinx and the marks of my feet where, on arrival, I had struggled with the overturned machine. There were other signs of removal about, with queer, narrow footprints, like those I could imagine made by a sloth. This directed my closer attention to the pedestal. It was, as I think I have said, of bronze. It was not a mere block, but highly decorated with deep framed panels on either side. I went and rapped at these. The pedestal was hollow. Examining the panels with care, I found them discontinuous with the frames. There were no handles or keyholes, but possibly the panels, if they were doors, as I supposed, opened from within. One thing was clear enough to my mind. It took no very great mental effort to infer that my time machine was inside that pedestal, but how it got there was a different problem. I saw the heads of two orange clad people coming through the bushes and under some blossom covered apple trees towards me. I turned smiling to them and beckoned them to me. They came, and then, pointing to the bronze pedestal, I tried to intimate my wish to open it. But at my first gesture towards this, they behaved very oddly. I don't know how to convey their expression to you. Suppose you were to use a grossly improper gesture to a delicate minded woman. It is how she would look. They went off as if they had received the last possible insult. I tried a sweet looking little chap in white next, with exactly the same result. Somehow, his manner made me feel ashamed of myself. But, as you know, I wanted the time machine, and I tried him once more. As he turned off, like the others, my temper got the better of me. In 3 strides, I was after him, had him by the loose part of his robe round the neck, and began dragging him towards the Sphinx. Then I saw the horror and repugnance of his face, and all of a sudden I let him go. But I was not beaten yet. I banged with my fist at the bronze panels. I thought I heard something stir inside. To be explicit, I thought I heard a sound like a chuckle, but I must have been mistaken. Then I got a big pebble from the river and came and hammered till I had flattened a coil in the decorations, and the verdigris came off in powdery flakes. The delicate little people must have heard me hammering in gusty outbreaks a mile away on either hand, but nothing came of it. I saw a crowd of them upon the slopes, looking furtively at me. At last, hot and tired, I sat down to watch the place. But I was too restless to watch long. I'm too occidental for a long vigil. I could work at a problem for years, but to wait inactive for 24 hours, that is another matter. I got up after a time and began walking aimlessly through the bushes towards the hill again. Patience, said I to myself. If you want your machine again, you must leave that Sphinx alone. If they mean to take your machine away, it's little good your wrecking their bronze panels, and if they don't, you will get it back as soon as you can ask for it. To sit among all those unknown things before a puzzle like that is hopeless. That way lies monomania. Face this world, learn its ways, watch it, be careful of too hasty guesses at its meaning. In the end, you will find clues to it all. Then suddenly the humor of the situation came into my mind. The thought of the years I had spent in study and toil to get into the future age, and now my passion of anxiety to get out of it. I had made myself the most complicated and the most hopeless trap that ever a man devised. Although it was at my own expense, I could not help myself. I laughed aloud. Going through the big palace, it seemed to me that the little people avoided me. May have been my fancy, or it may have had something to do with my hammering at the gates of bronze. Yet I felt tolerably sure of the avoidance. I was careful, however, to show no concern and to abstain from any pursuit of them. And in the course of a day or two, things got back to the old footing. I made what progress I could in the language, and in addition, I pushed my explorations here and there. Either I missed some subtle point, or their language was excessively simple, almost exclusively composed of concrete substantives and verbs. There seemed to be few, if any, abstract terms, or little use of figurative language. Their sentences were usually simple, of two words, and I failed to convey or understand any but the simplest propositions. I determined to put the thought of my time machine and the mystery of the bronze doors under the Sphinx as much as possible in a corner of memory until my growing knowledge would lead me back to them in a natural way. Yet a certain feeling, you may understand, tethered me in a circle of a few miles round the point of my arrival. So far as I could see, all the world displayed the same exuberant richness as the Thames Valley. From every hill I climbed, I saw the same abundance of splendid buildings, endlessly varied in material and style, the same clustering thickets of evergreens, the same blossom laden trees and tree ferns. Here and there, water shone like silver, and beyond, the land rose into blue, undulating hills, and so faded into the serenity of the sky. A peculiar feature, which presently attracted my attention, was the presence of certain circular wells, several, as it seemed to me, of a very great depth. One lay by the path up the hill, which I had followed during my first walk. Like the others, it was rimmed with bronze, curiously wrought, and protected by a little cupola from the rain. Sitting by the side of these wells, and peering down into the shafted darkness, I could see no gleam of water, nor could I start any reflection with a lighted match. But in all of them I heard a certain sound, a thud, 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 like the beating of some big engine, and I discovered, from the flaring of my matches, that a steady current of air set down the shafts. Further, I threw a scrap of paper into the throat of one, and, instead of fluttering slowly down, it was at once sucked swiftly out of sight. After a time, too, I came to connect these wells with tall towers standing here and there upon the slopes, for above them there was often just such a flicker in the air as one sees on a hot day above a sun-scorched beach. Putting things together, I reached a strong suggestion of an extensive system of subterranean ventilation, whose true import it was difficult to imagine. I was at first inclined to associate it with the sanitary apparatus of these people. It was an obvious conclusion, but it was absolutely wrong. Guess I'm gonna drink some water. Hope you guys are having fun. My viewer count's been 2 the whole time, but that probably means like 15 or 20 people. But um, I don't know. I don't know how that works, the view count thing. But with these reading streams, uh, it does seem like maybe like if I see 2 there for a long time, it does actually mean there's 2 people in here for a long time. And then like people who just come and go for a second, like they'll be counted later. Give me just a second. I'll be right back, guys. No, I forgot. Sometimes it'll just freeze up if you just walk away. Well, hello, Zoe. How are you, buddy? How's your yelly sister out there? She doing all right? You doing all right? Thanks for coming in, Zoe. Yeah? Are you happy? You happy with that cute squeak noise that you just made? Because I was very happy with that. And that was a very successful sound. So. Let's see. Right. Actually, let me take another hit off my pipe. I've almost quit smoking entirely. Not quite. My lungs really won't take it anymore. Like, I just can't smoke, right? And I've almost entirely adjusted to eating just the gummies. One small triumph, one small but meaningful triumph. Well, hello, Zoe. Are you gonna hop up in my lap? That hurts, man. That's your claws, dude. Yeah, look at this. Look at this. I got a Zoe suddenly hopping up in my lap. Okay, you just messed. You hear your sister? You gotta go. This is why I had the door closed. Ow. Too, Zoe. Yes, I'm glad you want to mark my little reading skin. But you can't. That's my skin. You can't do too, buddy. Calm down. All right. All right. Because your weird sister's gonna come in here gabbling and grabbling. I'm not sure what grabbling means. I am sure what yabbling means. You might have wondered. You might have wondered if that means anything, and it does. Grappling may be made up. All right, I'm going to shut the door now. Shut. All right, so Zoe, are you gonna chill? You gonna let me read? And here I must admit that I learned very little of drains and bells and modes of conveyance and the like conveniences during my in this real future. In some of these visions of utopias in coming times which I have read, there is a vast amount of detail about building and social arrangements and so forth. But while such details are easy enough to obtain when the whole world is contained in one's imagination, they are altogether inaccessible to a real traveler amid such realities as I found here. Conceive the tale of London which a Negro, fresh from Central Africa, would take back to his tribe. What would he know of railway companies, of social movements, of telephone and telegraph wires, of the parcels delivery company, and postal orders, and the like? Yet we at least should be willing enough to explain these things to him. And even of what he knew, how much could he make his untraveled friend either apprehend or believe? Then think how narrow the gap between a Negro and a white man of our own times, and how wide the interval between myself and these of the golden age. I was sensible of much which was unseen and which contributed to my comfort, but save for a general impression of automatic organization, I fear I can convey very little of the difference to your mind. I don't know why Pie gets going the way she is. I don't want to shut her in another room for a little while. I guess I'm just gonna let it go. It's a shame. Poor Pie. Poor Pie Wacket. I will comfort her. After I'm done with this reading stream, I'm gonna make spaghetti for me and Pie Wacket, and then me and Pie Wacket, because she's my familiar spirit, and I was supposed to be the baby and the godfather. We'll share a little plate of comfort food of pasta. Me and Pyewacket, my satanic friend, my ostrich, the Pyewacket. Not high. Not. I'm just happy. Zoe looks so sad that she's in here and Pyewacket is out there yowling. I'm gonna have to put you back out there then, Zoe. I can't let her in because she's just gonna. She will dilute the presentation. Sound is already bad enough. My sound is wretched already. All right, you gonna get out of it? Yeah, you can't come. No, you. So, Pyewacket. You can't come in here and yell though. You're just gonna make a bunch of ruckus because you're in heat. So you can't come in here. Poor Pyewacket. I know, buddy. No, Zoe. Zoe, you wanted to get out just a second ago. Oh my God. All right. Zoe. All right, you're gonna hang in here. All right. You don't have to go. I mean, in theory, neither does your sister, but like, she wasn't gonna do that. Listen, what are you gonna do? Put her in the howlery, which is like the growlery, but howlery. Poor kitty. If I wasn't doing the reading stream, I would go fuss about Pie. Toasty gets quiet. She doesn't act like it's particularly uncomfortable. She's just yelling. Yeah, I'm still reading John Porky. I just had to. I had to fuss with Pyewacket for a minute. All right. Wow. You have a question. You moved from Mississippi to a different state. Did you move to Ohio? I forget what state you moved to. I'm in Ohio. Yep. I'm back in Ohio. This is, I think, the 5th time I've lived in Ohio. It's like circling a drain. It's really pretty here. Like, there's nothing here where I am now, but it's not nothing like Lima. Like, there's a harbor. There's a bar crawl by the harbor. There's, it's by the water. It's going to be rough during the winter. I need a car. But it's nice, I like it. Let's see. In the matter of sepulture, for instance, I could see no signs of crematoria nor anything suggestive of tombs. But it occurred to me that possibly there might be cemeteries or crematoria somewhere beyond the range of my explorings. This, again, was a question I deliberately put to myself, and my curiosity was at first entirely defeated upon the point. The thing puzzled me, and I was led to make a further remark, which puzzled me still more, that aged and infirm among this people there were none. I must confess that my satisfaction with my first theories of an automatic civilization and a decadent humanity did not long endure. Yet I could think of no other. Let me put my difficulties. The several big palaces I had explored were mere living places, great dining halls and sleeping apartments. I could find no machinery, no appliances of any kind. Yet these people were clothed in pleasant fabrics that must at times need renewal, and their sandals, though undecorated, were fairly complex specimens of metalwork. Somehow such things must be made. And the little people displayed no vestige of creative tendency. There were no shops, no workshops, no sign of importations among them. They spent all their time in playing gently and bathing in the river and making love in a half playful fashion and eating fruit and sleeping. I could not see how things were kept going. Then, again, about the time machine. Something, I knew not what, had taken it into the hollow pedestal of the White Sphinx. Why? For the life of me, I could not imagine. Those waterless wells, too, those flickering pillars. I felt I lacked a clue. I felt, how shall I put it? Suppose you found an inscription with sentences here and there in excellent plain English, and interpolated therewith others made up of words, of letters even, absolutely unknown to you. Well, on the third day of my visit, that was how the world of 802,701 presented itself to me. That day, too, I made a friend of a sort. It happened that, as I was watching some of the little people bathing in a shallow, one of them was seized with cramp and began drifting downstream. The main current ran rather swiftly, but not too strongly for even a moderate swimmer. It will give you an idea, therefore, of the strange deficiency in these creatures when I tell you that none made the slightest attempt to rescue the weakly crying little thing which was drowning before their eyes. When I realized this, I hurriedly slipped off my clothes, and wading in at a point lower down, I caught the poor mite and drew her safe to land. A little rubbing of the limbs soon brought her round, and I had the satisfaction of seeing she was all right before I left her. I had got to such a low estimate of her kind that I did not expect any gratitude from her. In that, however, I was wrong. This happened in the morning. In the afternoon, I met my little woman, as I believe it was, as I was returning towards my center from an exploration. And she received me with cries of delight and presented me with a big garland of flowers, evidently made for me and me alone. The thing took my imagination. Very possibly I had been feeling desolate. At any rate, I did my best to display my appreciation of the gift. We were soon seated together in a little stone arbor, engaged in conversation, chiefly of smiles. The creature's friendliness affected me exactly as a child's might have done. We passed each other flowers, and she kissed my hands. I did the same to hers. Then I tried talk, and found that her name was Weena, which, though I don't know what it meant, somehow seemed appropriate enough. That was the beginning of a queer friendship which lasted a week and ended, as I will tell you. She was exactly like a child. She wanted to be with me always. She tried to follow me everywhere. And on my next journey out and about, it went to my heart to tire her down and leave her at last, exhausted and calling after me rather plaintively. But the problems of the world had to be mastered. I had not, I said to myself, come into the future to carry on a miniature flirtation. Yet her distress when I left her was very great. Her expostulations at the parting were sometimes frantic, and I think altogether I had as much trouble as comfort from her devotion. Nevertheless, she was, somehow, a very great comfort. I thought it was mere childish affection that made her cling to me. Until it was too late, I did not clearly know what I had inflicted upon her when I left her. Nor until it was too late did I clearly understand what she was to me. For, by merely seeming fond of me, and showing in her weak, futile way that she cared for me, the little doll of a creature presently gave my return to the neighborhood of the White Sphinx almost the feeling of coming home, and I would watch for her tiny figure of white and gold as soon as I came over the hill. It was from her, too, that I learned that fear had not yet left the world. She was fearless enough in the daylight, and she had the oddest confidence in me. For once, in a foolish moment, I made threatening grimaces at her, and she simply laughed at them. But she dreaded the dark, dreaded shadows, dreaded black things. Darkness to her was the one thing dreadful. It was a singularly passionate emotion, and it set me thinking and observing. I discovered then, among other things, that these little people gathered into the great houses after dark and slept in droves. To enter upon them without a light was to put them into a tumult of apprehension. I never found one out of doors, or one sleeping alone within doors after dark. Yet I was still such a blockhead that I missed the lesson of that fear. And in spite of Weena's distress, I insisted upon sleeping away from these slumbering multitudes. It troubled her greatly, but in the end her odd affection for me triumphed, and for 5 of the nights of our acquaintance, including the last night of all, she slept with her head pillowed on my arm. But my story slips away from me as I speak of her. It must have been the night before her rescue that I was awakened about dawn. I had been restless, dreaming most disagreeably that I was drowned, and that sea anemones were feeling over my face with their soft palps. I woke with a start, and with an odd fancy that some grayish animal had just rushed out of the chamber. I tried to get to sleep again, but I felt restless and uncomfortable. It was that dim gray hour when things are just creeping out of darkness, when everything is colorless and clear cut and yet unreal. I got up and went down into the great hall, and so out upon the flagstones in front of the palace. I thought I would make a virtue of necessity and see the sunrise. The moon was setting, and the dying moonlight and the first pallor of dawn were mingled in a ghastly half light. The bushes were inky black, the ground a somber gray, the sky colorless and cheerless. And up the hill I thought I could see ghosts. There, several times, as I scanned the slope, I saw white figures. Twice I fancied I saw a solitary white, ape like creature running rather quickly up the hill, and once near the ruins I saw a leash of them carrying some dark body. They moved hastily. I did not see what became of them. It seemed that they vanished among the bushes. The dawn was still indistinct, you must understand. I was feeling that chill, uncertain, early morning feeling you may have known. I doubted my eyes. As the eastern sky grew brighter and the light of the day came on and its vivid coloring returned upon the world once more, I scanned the view keenly, but I saw no vestige of my white figures. They were mere creatures of the half light. They must have been ghosts, I said. I wonder whence they dated. For a queer notion of Grant Allen's came into my head and amused me. If each generation die and leave ghosts, he argued, the world at last will get overcrowded with them. On that theory, they would have grown innumerable some 800,000 years hence. It was no great wonder to see four at once. But the jest was unsatisfying, and I was thinking of these figures all the morning, until Weena's rescue drove them out of my head. I associated them in some indefinite way with the white animal I had startled in my first passionate search for the time machine. But Weena was a pleasant substitute. Yet all the same, they were soon destined to take far deadlier possession of my mind. Hmm. I think I have said how much hotter than our own was the weather of this golden age. I cannot account for it. It may be that the sun was hotter, or the earth nearer the sun. It is usual to assume that the sun will go on cooling steadily in the future. But people, unfamiliar with such speculations as those of the younger Darwin, forget that the planets must ultimately fall back one by one into the parent body. As these catastrophes occur, the sun will blaze with renewed energy, and it may be that some inner planet had suffered this fate. Whatever the reason, the fact remains that the sun was very much hotter than we know it. Well, one very hot morning, my fourth, I think, as I was seeking shelter from the heat and glare in a colossal ruin near the great house where I slept and fed, there happened this strange thing. Clambering among these heaps of masonry, I found a narrow gallery whose end and side windows were blocked by fallen masses of stone. By contrast with the brilliancy outside, it seemed at first impenetrably dark to me. I entered it groping, for the change from light to blackness made spots of color swim before me. Suddenly I halted spellbound. A pair of eyes, luminous by reflection against the daylight without, was watching me out of the darkness. The old instinctive dread of wild beasts came upon me. I clenched my hands and steadfastly looked into the glaring eyeballs. I was afraid to turn. Then the thought of the absolute security in which humanity appeared to be living came to my mind. And then I remembered that strange terror of the dark. Overcoming my fear to some extent, I advanced a step and spoke. I will admit that my voice was harsh and ill controlled. I put out my hand and touched something soft. At once the eyes darted sideways, and something white ran past me. I turned with my heart in my mouth, and saw a queer little ape like figure, its head held down in a peculiar manner, running across the sunlit space behind me. It blundered against a block of granite, staggered aside, and in a moment was hidden in a black shadow beneath another pile of ruined masonry. My impression of it is, of course, imperfect, but I know it was a dull white and had strange, large, grayish red eyes. Also, that there was flaxen hair on its head and down its back. But, as I say, it went too fast for me to see distinctly. I cannot even say whether it ran on all fours or only with its forearms held very low. After an instant's pause, I followed it into the second heap of ruins. I could not find it at first, but after a time, in the profound obscurity, I came upon one of those round well like openings of which I have told you, half closed by a fallen pillar. A sudden thought came to me. Could this thing have vanished down the shaft? I lit a match, and looking down, I saw a small, white, moving creature with large, bright eyes which regarded me steadfastly as it retreated. It made me shudder. It was so like a human spider. It was clambering down the wall, and now I saw for the first time a number of metal foot and hand rests forming a kind of ladder against the shaft. Then the light burned my fingers and fell out of my hand, going out as it dropped, and when I had lit another, the little monster had disappeared. I do not know how long I sat peering down that well. It was not for some time that I could succeed in persuading myself that the thing I had seen was human. But gradually, the truth dawned on me that man had not remained one species, but had differentiated into two distinct animals. That my graceful children of the upper world were not the sole descendants of our generation, but that this bleached, obscene, nocturnal thing which had flashed before me was also heir to all the ages. I thought of the flickering pillars and of my theory of an underground ventilation. I began to suspect their true import. And what, I wondered, was this lemur doing in my scheme of a perfectly balanced organization? How was it related to the indolent serenity of the beautiful upper worlders? And what was hidden down there at the foot of that shaft? Do you need out? You wanted to be in here, buddy. I thought you were out there, actually. I totally thought you were out there. What? There you go. She does not like being separated from her sister. It's good to know. It's interesting to know. I've been sort of adamant about not even considering any options that separate pi and Zo or that might separate pi and Zo because they've never been separated, like not even by a closed door. Zo sure does not like it. And what was hidden down there at the foot of that shaft? I sat upon the edge of the well, telling myself that at any rate there was nothing to fear, and that there I must descend for the solution of my difficulties. And withal, I was absolutely afraid to go. As I hesitated, two of the beautiful upper world people came running in their amorous sport across the daylight in the shadow. The male pursued the female, flinging flowers at her as he ran. They seemed distressed to find me, my arm against the overturned pillar, peering down the well. Apparently, it was considered bad form to remark these apertures, for when I pointed to this one and tried to frame a question about it in their tongue, they were still more visibly distressed and turned away. But they were interested by my matches, and I struck some to amuse them. I tried them again about the well, and again I failed. So presently I left them, meaning to go back to Weena and see what I could get from her. But my mind was already in revolution. My guesses and impressions were slipping and sliding to a new adjustment. I had now a clue to the import of these wells, to the ventilating towers, to the mystery of the ghosts, to say nothing of a hint at the meaning of the bronze gates and the fate of the time machine. Very vaguely, there came a suggestion towards the solution of the economic problem that had puzzled me. Here was the new view. Plainly, this second species of man was subterranean. There were three circumstances in particular which made me think that its rare emergence above ground was the outcome of a long continued underground habit. In the first place, there was the bleached look common in most animals that live largely in the dark. The whitefish of the Kentucky caves, for instance. Then, those large eyes, with that capacity for reflecting light, are common features of nocturnal things. Witness the owl and the cat. And last of all, that evident confusion in the sunshine, that hasty yet fumbling, awkward flight towards dark shadow, and that peculiar carriage of the head while in the light, all reinforced the theory of an extreme sensitiveness of the retina. Beneath my feet, then, the earth must be tunneled enormously, and these tunnelings were the habitat of the new race. The presence of ventilating shafts and wells along the hill slopes, everywhere, in fact, except along the river valley, showed how universal were its ramifications. What so natural, then, as to assume that it was in this artificial underworld that such work as was necessary to the comfort of the daylight race was done? The notion was so plausible that I at once accepted it and went on to assume the how of this splitting of the human species. I dare say you will anticipate the shape of my theory, though, for myself, I very soon felt that it fell far short of the truth. At first, proceeding from the problems of our own age, it seemed clear as daylight to me that the gradual widening of the present merely temporary and social difference between the capitalist and the laborer was the key to the whole position. Fucking socialist. No doubt it will seem grotesque enough to you, and wildly incredible. And yet, even now, there are existing circumstances to point that way. There is a tendency to utilize underground space for the less ornamental purposes of civilization. There is the Metropolitan Railway in London, for instance. There are new electric railways, there are subways, there are underground workrooms and restaurants, and they increase and multiply. Evidently, I thought this tendency had gone deeper and deeper into larger and ever larger underground factories, spending a still increasing amount of its time therein, till, in the end, even now, does not an East End worker live in such artificial conditions as practically to be cut off from the natural surface of the earth? Hmm. I totally think the idea of living entirely underground is quaint and cute and cool. I suppose I wouldn't if I had to do it. Again, the exclusive tendency of richer people, due no doubt to the increasing refinement of their education and the widening gulf between them and the rude violence of the poor, is already leading to the closing, in their interest, of considerable portions of the surface of the land. About London, for instance, perhaps half the prettier country is shut in against intrusion. And this same widening gulf, which is due to the lengthened expense of the higher educational process and the increased facilities for and temptations towards refined habits on the part of the rich, will make that exchange between class and class, that promotion by intermarriage which at present retards the splitting of our species along lines of social stratification, less and less frequent. So, in the end, above ground, you must have the haves, pursuing pleasure and comfort and beauty, and below ground, the have nots, the workers getting continually adapted to the conditions of their labor. Once they were there, they would no doubt have to pay rent, and not a little of it, for the ventilation of their caverns. And if they refused, they would starve or be suffocated for arrears. Such of them as were so constituted as to be miserable and rebellious would die. And in the end, the balance being permanent, the survivors would become as well adapted to the conditions of underground life and as happy in their way as the upper world people were to theirs, as it seemed to me. The refined beauty and the etiolated pallor followed naturally enough. The great triumph of humanity I had dreamed of took a different shape in my mind. It had been no such triumph of moral education and general cooperation as I had imagined. Instead, I saw a real aristocracy, armed with a perfected science and working to a logical conclusion the industrial system of today. Its triumph had not been simply a triumph over nature, but a triumph over nature and the fellow man. This, I must warn you, was my theory at the time. I had no convenient cicerone in the pattern of the utopian books. My explanation may be absolutely wrong. I still think it is the most plausible one. But even on this supposition, the balanced civilization that was at last attained must have long since passed its zenith and was now fallen far into decay. The too perfect security of the upper worlders had led them to a slow movement of degeneration, to a general dwindling in size, strength, and intelligence. That I could see clearly enough already. What had happened to the undergrounders I did not yet suspect, but from what I had seen of the Morlocks, that, by the by, was the name by which these creatures were called. I could imagine that the modification of the human type was even far more profound than among the Eloi, the beautiful race that I already knew. Then came troublesome doubts. Why had the Morlocks taken my time machine? For I felt sure it was they who had taken it. Why? 2. If the Eloi were masters, could they not restore the machine to me? And why were they so terribly afraid of the dark? I proceeded, as I have said, to question Weena about this underworld, but here again I was disappointed. At first she would not understand my questions, and presently she refused to answer them. She shivered as though the topic was unendurable, and when I pressed her, perhaps a little harshly, she burst into tears. They were the only tears, except my own, I ever saw in that golden age. When I saw them, I ceased abruptly to trouble about the Morlocks, and was only concerned in banishing these signs of the human inheritance from Weena's eyes. And very soon she was smiling and clapping her hands, while I solemnly burnt a match. It's the end of the chapter. Stop there. Thanks for being to it, guys. It is a great pleasure to read H.G. Wells out loud. Man. Hey, John Porky, how are you? What do you think of the John Machine? This is like, I really like that it. Am I tired? Maybe you should get some rest before work now. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna make sure I eat well and yeah, get some sleep. Try to get some sleep. I'm gonna put myself to bed. Man, it's Wells's writing style. John Porky is it actually reminds me of Tolkien, and that it's just sort of elegant and concise. It's just pleasant. It's just smart. Um, he wrote a book called A Child's History of England that's supposed to be really like still like really great. Like they were still using it in schools some in the 1950s and 1960s. It's written on like a fifth grade, sixth grade level. But I thought about reading that for my late night streams. Wells is A Child's History of England because it's like that John F. Kennedy like profiles in courage. Like I'm sure it's really interesting. Like it would totally be ASMR as shit though. Like it would totally be about us all going to sleep together, but still. I need to stop missing nights reading. Like I got well, especially if I do it every night. If I do it every night at about the same time every night, then my stamina for doing it very slowly grows. There's like a weird I don't think I can get it past 2 hours and still be really in the zone for reading. Um, ASMR is nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's cool that it's live. Like the longer I can do it, the more that matters. That matters. Um, I would very much like to get that up to about 2 hours. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like the natural attention span. I'd like to get it to where my voice will handle maybe 2 hours 20. But I would expect to have to take some breaks a little bit and like hang out. It's kind of, I mean, I guess that'd be organic. If I can make sure I'm here every night, then there'll be more people hanging out in the chat. I totally accidentally left my copy of Lord of the Rings in that trailer in Mississippi. 2 to 2.5 hours is nice, yeah. Well, and it really also, John Porky, I feel like, I don't know, it is, that's, I'm not gonna live long. Uh, when I'm gone, the reading streams are gonna matter more than the like chat and hanging out streams in certain odd but important ways. Especially, especially if I get into this really obscure fantasy and horror literature that, like, I mean, the first couple of dozen books were fairly obvious in canon. But even there, like the Conan stories, I don't know that anyone else is doing that. I mean, there must be audiobook recordings of Robert Howard. Um, he isn't as famous as he should be. Like the same people who love Lord of the Rings should love Robert Howard's Conan stories. Um, there's probably audio recordings, but not many people reading them live. Yeah, well, reading it live is really important, especially for, I need to get some more of the kind of epic fantasy that's really sort of immersive on a grand scale, like the way Lord of the Rings is. Gormenghast is similar. Like there's something weirdly opiated and tuned out about it. The short stories that are like Victorian, Edwardian, like Gothic horror and ghost stories, like those are really good too. Um, it feels more personal when you read it live. Yeah, it matters a lot. Like it matters a lot. I don't, especially with the fantasy stuff, where the the specific level of bought in pretension as a voice actor that makes it work is really like, it's like I'm putting on my Dungeons and Dragons voice. Like I it's really fun, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as fun if it wasn't live. Um yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good fantasy like that from the 70s and 80s. Uh, I want to live 15 more years just for that project of discussing classic fantasy and horror literature here. From between 1850 and 1950. But then the fantasy classics, there's a heavy scattering of that, like all across. Um, just 70. Yeah, 70. I mean, I don't want to live at all, but it's really, It's nice to be able to share this. It's really nice to be able to share this. Like, I started researching and reading the obscure, weirdo fantasy classics that like have reputations like Lord of the Rings, but obscure. Like, I started reading that stuff when I was in my mid-teens. I'm still not read up on all the classics that are fit for this late night readings project. Wish, just wish it wasn't so sad. I wish I had family. I wish I had family. It's just so bare here. There's just nothing here. I can't imagine that I can live much longer. I can't imagine it. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Gotta do my best. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be interrupted. You're always going to be interrupted no matter what you're doing. It's cool to have. I mean, it's nice to have old man pursuits in front of me with which to tinker that will be rewarding in exactly the right ways. I just need a better microphone. By the time I really need old man health care, the channel will be paying for if I get a better microphone. I'll do Lovecraft over again, do Tolkien over again with a better microphone. Maybe maybe a green screen. At least we have the YouTube family. I met a guy at the Family Dollar who might be interesting for hanging out with. Actually, like a guy working at the Family Dollar had a really interesting sort of booming voice. He looked like he was on his way to audition for playing John Goodman in The Big Lebowski. Um, and he sort of bitterly complained that if he'd understood how his life was going to go, he would have stayed in California 30 years ago. Now that he's like shown a talent for voice acting, like that is to say, he's been doing some work online, is what he was implying, like professionally. And I thought, like, okay, cool. So that's one person for doing table readings for vintage plays. I just need, I don't know. Like, it's a shame that he's so much the same type as me in so many ways. It's like I'm Aragorn and he's Boromir is like but it's, good enough. I'll do all the sniveling and weaseling and gay characters and this other guy. But we need two girls. We need two girls, and then we can do roundtable readings in here live, and it'll be fun. There isn't a college right here. I gotta go hang out at the bars over by the harbor, and then maybe I'll meet some people who want to do some acting on the fly, like for fun, for late night streams. When do you plan on modding and remodding everyone? I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Not tomorrow or the next day, just because I'm working. Like I'm working in the morning, and then I'm working Thursday, so I expect to be not wide awake. Uh, What am I gonna have for dinner? Spaghetti. I think spaghetti. Yeah. Yep. Pie Wacket wanted spaghetti. I don't know if you heard her yelling, but that's what she was yelling for. Okay. I'm gonna go do that. I may what time is it? Yeah, I hate to I'm gonna have to try to drug myself into passing out by just sheer force of I'm gonna take an extra gummy and drug myself into it just so I get 5 hours of bullshit that isn't even good sleep so that I can like I only it's only 4 hours of work. Like the only reason to fuss about trying to get any sleep at all is it's painting. And so it's detail work with the hand and the eye and I don't want to be shaky. It's painting banisters and stuff without like smearing the wall. So like yeah, not something like I definitely want as much sleep as possible, be steady. That's my favorite, yeah. Yeah, I love spaghetti. This neighborhood is Italian enough that the dollar store, one of the dollar stores, has a pretty good kind of upscale red sauce, like marinara. That's like an Italian, like made in the neighborhood. Like it's like someone in the neighborhood had gone to the trouble of making sure they had a display of their product in um, a Catholic church, actually. And their red sauce, their marinara is pretty good. Um, I'll show you guys later when I buy some more later, so I nail it down what I'm talking about. You wish your neighborhood had a store like that. There's a bunch of really cool stuff that's just sort of seedy looking, up east looking Italian stuff. And it's like I said, there's a harbor. There's a hell of a bar crawl in the harbor. Like it looks like a cartoon of a bar crawl. Like if I was gonna make a movie anywhere near here, I would use that. Like, and it's literally like you can tell it went seedy and went to crap and got creepy and all run down, and then people came in and gentrified it all and turned it into bars and restaurants. Um, like you can see it. Like you can literally like you stand at the top of a it's like a 2 block stretch and then there's the like you can it's that street that goes into the drawbridge. The yeah, drawbridge, right? It lifts. Um Arboreal octopi, how are you? So yeah, I should very easily be starting to cool off soon. Maybe sometime soon you'll take to see the area. I gotta figure out, John Porky, I have to decide what the test is to see if the ops blow up the phone. Maybe the Frida Kahlo place is the place to do that. Except that's the Mexican place that serves alcohol that's right by the movie theater. So I don't wanna risk getting kicked out of there. And it's run by like a feminist, like a Frida Kahlo fan, like owns the place. Like they're femi. It's like it's got a Gloria Steinem vibe. If anyone over here is gonna get spooked by getting called about that guy live streaming from the table in the back corner, it'll be them. Like I don't wanna. Food is okay. I can't remember the name of this place. Do you think if you never told us the names of the places and just showed us the inside, that it would be safer? So that's one thing I can do, John Porky, for sure. Over in the harbor neighborhood, I can straight up like become a regular somewhere where I tell them, like I'm a live streamer, I got ops coming at me. There's this very creepy attack going on online. You can look it up. But I don't want to let anyone know where I am. I'm just going to sit in the back corner here. Like my audience isn't big enough for it to matter to them that I'm live streaming. Um, but nobody wants their phone blown up with these cocksuckers, excuse my French, coming at them on their phone, blowing it up. Like my my landlady was like, "Don't tell anyone in your streams anymore that I'm your landlord." Like I don't know what was going on in her chat, but the ops who haven't been coming in here have been coming at her. I don't know why. Maybe they think they've got her rattled. Um, she isn't gonna. I don't think the Mississippi trolls will know where you are unless you name the places so they may look. Yeah, I mean, right, exactly, John Porky. Yeah, um, right. That's what I mean by mentioning. I'm not a popular enough streamer. My audience is not big enough for it to matter to them that I do not mention where I am, if you follow. Yeah, somewhere where I can get a $20 burger, flirt with the waitress, and get drunk in the back corner. That's picturesque. The whole neighborhood is super picturesque. There's at least 5 places where I don't know whether I want to hang out there or maybe work there. Over there. Like, it's super cute. It's gonna be too far to want to be a regular over there when it's not seasonal. Like it's like 2 miles. It's probably like a 35-minute bike ride. Like it's just the absolute outside of I'll go over there on the bike. I will though. And I definitely would to work there. Like to work there. I'll figure something out right away. I will buy a cheap electric bicycle or something like right away. It's just a super cute neighborhood for like bars and restaurant work for fine dining. Have you went there without telling us, or have you just? No, no. I went. I didn't have any money to hang out over there the day I rode down the street and rode back up. I just went and walked over to the harbor, looked at the harbor. Um, there's a restaurant around past there that my boss pointed out to me. Um, like a super popular seafood place. It's like the kind of place that's like kind of expensive, but kind of family oriented and has a parking lot with a capacity for like, I don't know, like it was a huge parking lot. It was busy when we drove by at like 4 in the afternoon on a random day. Um, but it's not quite in the neighborhood I was talking about. I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna get a second job. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but uh, people can't ban you from places like parks or nature areas. So, well, John Porky, I don't know. How much they're gonna keep. It's gotten quiet around here. I really think it's like 2 or 3 people. I'm not sure. Like yesterday, somebody came in who was really fussing about jelly and was really worried about jelly. I think that was organically a real person. Like they were acting like the Mississippi trolls. That might be where they came from. But I think they were actually worried about jelly. Mostly, it's clearly 2 or 3 people. And they seem to have gotten really into this. Like they just are, it's important to be devious. Like they come up with these weird, like, what was the thing about the PDF Hunter channel that was going to drop a video that was currently only a Patreon, subscriber thing that someone I'd been texting. I wish I was in there when they said that. They said that so there were 3 or 4 people at once. Now, this was one of these John Porky that it's become really clear now, right? That whoever it is who can do the multiple accounts thing just thinks they're real swoofed, but it's the same move every time. Like I can sort of sense it. It's like a shell game move, like a shell. Like they can only do about 3, like right, like it goes boom boom, like because it's still just one person typing. So even if they set up some of the accounts ahead, and some of them are set up a couple of months ahead sometimes, like they've got a stack to use. The numerous screens and accounts, right, right. But they can still only type, they can only type, they can only type. It's only at the most 2 people, 2 keyboards being manned when that goes nuts. Like there was a minute in Mississippi when the attacks were fierce, where it was definitely more than just 2 people. Now, uh, I feel fairly confident it's almost always just 2 people. Generally, like then there's like a normal flow. Like I said, the person who's worried about Jelly yesterday, just like why is there a child hanging out of here? Dude, it's 4 in the morning. Why is Jelly in here? You know we like her, all right? We like her. Who are you, buddy? But like the evil trolls, the ones who genuinely they ain't worried about nobody's well-being. I don't know, they may go entirely away. I don't know, they've been bothering my boss. I didn't see them tonight. I think once or twice the day before yesterday. Like, damn, what do they want you to do? Catch a flight? He uses their phone, and when they do, I mean, I really, the damage that these horrible stories are going to do to me permanently, socially and online socially. That's one thing. I'm really worried about her mental health, of course, my daughter. That's another thing. But I'm more, yeah, like this conversation is really about, like, yeah, let's get back to the channel being about fun out in the world. Like, let's see if these people keep stalking at me, I'm gonna have to hedge off anything that has to do with where I live. I'm gonna keep that hedged off, and anything that has to do with anywhere I work. And I'm definitely gonna get a second job. But they already, like my boss said, they came into her chat saying that I had gotten a second job somewhere, that I was saying in my chat that I had a job somewhere. It's like you never, like with the internet, you never know. Like it might not actually be the ops fucking with us, but I think it's probably the ops fucking with us, like just being weird. I wonder, you know what? I wonder if they're coming at her because of when she was on. You get a second job in a restaurant and hotel. I wonder if I haven't been seeing them because I've been trying to lock it down to 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. And for whatever reason, that's keeping the trolls off of me. The ops messing with my boss is going overboard. Yeah, I mean, and I hadn't been saying like where I live or who she is or who her stream is. I hadn't mentioned that shit. Like that she figured she had cause to say, you don't tell anyone over there who's your landlady. She's like, some of the shit they're saying about you is crazy. Like, I don't know. I don't know what they're like. You already know the story, the bizarre stories being concocted behind the Reddit attack page. So I don't know what they were saying in her chat that she just blocked and kicked him out. Like God only knows. Like what could it be? How do you, like how much more escalating? She seemed genuinely disturbed. Like how much more escalating can you do? Like I was already a kidnapper and child molester, so I don't know. What do you have to ratchet it up to past that? So she's like, okay, like these people who are your ops are really out of control. Don't mention me to anyone else because I don't want. How crazy these trolls are. Oh no, she definitely does, John Porky. Though she definitely also a little bit blames the entire environment I have inculcated. Like, definitely a little bit. She's like, yeah, your chat's nuts. She's like, your chat's just out of control all the time. There's a bunch of kids in there. There's a like the mental health factor is out of control even for YouTube chat. Yeah, that is my community. Yes. Our short bus is really short. It's more like it. It's like our short bus is shaped like an ice cream sandwich front way. With the wheels. Like it's not even you wouldn't know that it was a bus. It would not look like a bus. You would be like, what is that? This is very short. That's how short it is. This is what I'm saying. You know what's funny also about the like um oh yeah, she wouldn't put up with any bullshit. Like I don't know. She tells me I should be tougher with my chat. Like I just need to be meaner to these people. I don't know. She she's watched me some for a while, so she must know that I go nuts sometimes. Like she must have seen me blow the fuck up. Like can't get around that. Also, like she's genuinely mobbed up, and like she's had me looked at. Like she isn't like these people with their bizarre made up stories. Like she'll immediately, like 99% of every possible made up story, she'll immediately be like, no, like we already looked that up, so no. I don't know what you're saying about Rogan, but no. But whatever it was that people were saying really disturbed her. I wish they'd leave her alone. So yeah, I'm a little worried about them going after other people. Like any bar I start hanging out at, any restaurant I start hanging out at. Over there, there's several bar and grill places that look like likely places to. This has become like my only real bad habit is that I'll spend $60 on 3 drinks and a hamburger and a decent tip. Like I'm a yuppie. Like I'm rolling like a yuppie. I'll do that once a week, and then there's no money. Like it's like in Hattiesburg, there's a good argument for doing that for the channel because there's always somewhere else I could cover for the channel. But that comes back to if the ops are going to come at places when I promote them, then I can't promote them. And then it isn't like I like to eat well. Like that would actually still be my own personal bad habit, but I would do it a lot less, a lot less. You can always buy your own bottle and pregame and then just have a cheap beer or something. Well, I mean, yeah, it's different if it's for the channel, John Porky. It's just different. Like, yeah, and being able to like just post a couple pictures of the cool place and say this is where I ate is different than. I mean, I don't know about the ops coming at these places. I don't know. They swarmed Hub City Beers. Uh, the Tavern and Keg and Barrel in Hattiesburg, they hadn't hit them to get me banned, but I could see that that was gonna happen. They got me fired from at least 2 jobs. But what happens when they try that here? Like, I don't know. But I'm gonna be real careful. Like, because I'm gonna want to work at those places. I'm gonna want to hang out at those places. I'm gonna want to work at those places. So, like, it's different because they can't come into the bar and act like Tia and Holly did, right? Yeah. Who knows how much havoc they can cause blowing up the phone at the bar? And it's different if they know I'm a regular, but they don't know when I'm there. Right. So, like I said, I'll feel it out. But that neighborhood, it's very likely that I'll find a place to hang out and park my act where I can tell them, like, look, you can look at my channel, you can look at that Reddit page, I can tell them the story. Like, so I'm like laying low with the doing IRL streams, but it isn't a big enough audience for them to write. Like, if I'm sitting at the bar in the Harbor neighborhood and I tell the world where I am, nobody's going to come in because of that. I mean, there's a chance. I'm in North Ohio, well, lake, like it's not really a chance. Like people would be like, "Do you want to meet me in Cleveland?" So there's nothing to be gained. Like, but I could almost certainly find a place where it'll be like there's a corner of the bar where I can park and live stream. and get drunk. I don't work on the weekends. So like the harbor neighborhood overlooking the harbor that's got a bar crawl. This Saturday and Sunday, I'll have the day off too. I might actually have fun. That might actually be fun. That is the kind of neighborhood where you meet interesting people. Rich people sometimes are just kind of boring, but rich people who like boats hang out in neighborhoods where boats are. Like there's a yacht club right there, like at the bottom of that street. Like it's a boat neighborhood. So you know, uh, those people tend to be flaky and interesting. Um, all they can do is call the establishment and complain. Yeah, I mean, it depends on. I've had the most fun in my life with people who are affluent. No, yeah, no, people who have money have to be filtered for knowing how to spend it, actually. But party neighborhoods like this place I'm talking about, really good places to meet really interesting people. Um, this neighborhood in general is uh Lima was like this too. There's a little bit less going on. Where like it's zero population growth. No, businesses aren't failing, nor are they thriving. People aren't moving in, nor are they moving out. If you hang out at the bars and the restaurants, you're going to meet people with a little bit of money who wish there was more to do. But, uh, yeah, all right, guys. I try not to let these reading streams go on and turn into chat streams at the end, like we just did. Um, but thanks for being here. And yeah, I just have to be up early for work. I should be on at regular times tomorrow. My God, what the fuck time is it? What day is it? 1:41 a.m. on Wednesday. Trying to find a girlfriend. Yeah. I want someone female to go around with and do cool stuff with, Ali. Uh, like, yeah, someone female with an interesting personality who wants to take long rides to do eating stuff and stuff like that for the channel. But yeah, I gotta see if I'm gonna get stalked. I gotta see. Man, it's still young Johnny. What is the Johnny? Oh, you're talking to John Porky. That was a different Johnny earlier. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much, everybody.